Please rise. May the God of hope fill you with complete joy and peace as you continue to believe, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. Here again, words written for us in Acts chapter 11. A report about this reached the ears of the church of Jerusalem, and they sent Barnabas to go to Antioch. When he arrived and saw God's grace, he was glad, and encouraged them all to remain true to the Lord and with devoted hearts. He was a good man, full of the Holy Spirit and faith, and a large number of people were added to the Lord. Then Barnabas went to Tarsus to look for Saul. When he found him, he brought him to Antioch. A whole year they met with the church and taught a large number of people. It was in Antioch that the disciples were first called Christians. You may be seated. My dear Christian friends, he slowed down and took in the scene. Pieces of car were strewn across the entire highway. Someone was leaning against the guardrail, talking on his cell phone. A woman sat on the ground with her head in her hands. He hadn't witnessed the accident. He wasn't a trained medical professional. He was sure that all the calls had been made. So after he cleared the scene, he sped up and went on with his day. What else was he supposed to do, he thought. He said a prayer, but he was thinking, what can I do? We often find ourselves in situations wondering, what can I do? Someone is struggling, but you don't know the right words to say. Someone is hurting, but you don't really know how you can help. Your heart breaks for them, but you ask, what can I do? Can we, the church, ever really ask that question, what can I do? Even if everything is falling apart around us, even if we are personally struggling and tragedy enters our lives, even if our churches are shrinking and the hostility to the truth is growing and we feel powerless to do anything, even if all the problems out there are so big and we feel so very small, can we, dear body of Christ, can we ever wonder, what can I do? They ran. They scattered. The stones started flying and they got out of there because Stephen, the best of them, the boldest of them, the one on whom the Spirit of the Lord rested, Stephen lay dead. And they could do nothing to stop it. They were completely defenseless. So what could they do? They left. Some returned to their homelands. Some made new homes. They fled, and God's Spirit went with them. Up the coast of Phoenicia, a short sail to Cyprus, even as far as Antioch, the great city on the upper corner of the Mediterranean Sea. The gospel was spreading. The Christians took the good news of Jesus Christ and they told it to their neighbors. At first, they spread it only to the Jews, those who were like them, who thought like them, who were their closest neighbors, who shared their culture and their heritage, those who believed in the God of Abraham and who were waiting for the Messiah. It was natural for them to share the one true God with them, that Jesus had come, that the promises of God were fulfilled, that their sins were all forgiven. But as Christians continued to move around, some from Cyrene in North Africa and from Cyprus came to Antioch, and they began to speak also to the Greeks, preaching the good news about the Lord Jesus. And so in this time of struggle and distress, God was accomplishing great things. The Lord's hand was with them, and a large number of people believed and turned to the Lord. Now, when God delivered the law from Mount Sinai, he did not permit any changes. When the exiles came back from Babylon, they worked vehemently and relentlessly to make sure that they could hold on to the traditions and they would be kept pure. Judaism was, and Orthodox Judaism remains today, the oldest and the most stable religion. Jesus then came and fulfilled the law. Then he shattered the grave. Then Jesus proclaimed the forgiveness of sins. Then he instituted baptism in the place of circumcision. Jesus shed his own blood instead of the blood of the Lamb. He commissioned the disciples, "Go and preach the good news to all creation." He sent Peter to Cornelius saying, "Don't call anything unclean that I have declared clean." Believers in the God of Abraham, the Lord, our God and Lord, who could look back at all of those unchanging times and all of their unchanging traditions, suddenly had things changing around them at rapid speed. Greeks, who came from a wildly different culture and background and worldview, heard the gospel and they believed. The old traditions were passing away, and Christians were developing new practices in their place. Drastic change, especially drastic change on the heels of a time of distress and crisis, were bound to make some uneasy. For the sake of the believers there, and for the sake of those new believers in Antioch, when a report about this reached the ears of the church in Jerusalem, they sent Barnabas to Antioch. Born on Cyprus, about the same time as Jesus, his parents named him Joseph. Tradition holds that the bright young man was sent to Jerusalem to learn at the feet of the famous Rabbi Gamaliel. Some speculate that that was where he first heard Jesus. Some even say he may have been among the 72 that Jesus sent out to go preach and teach to all the villages and towns of Judea. When the early church was just getting its footing, he sold his inheritance as an act of faith, and he gave every penny to the church so that all could share in his worldly gifts. All the Christians of Jerusalem admired him, so they renamed him Barnabas, which means a son of encouragement. He knew the apostles personally. He had their full trust. He was an expert in Moses and the prophets. He knew the teachings of Jesus very well as anyone. And he was headed to Antioch to evaluate. What would he find? What would he think? How would he respond? Were they doing things right? What would a great man like Barnabas say? When I'm working on my motorcycle, I don't just start taking it apart and hope I can figure out how it all goes back together again. Nor do I just go on YouTube and watch some dude do the same. No, I have a service manual. And in that service manual, it lists every single bolt and specification and all of the steps to do any job you might possibly want to do. It'll tell you in extreme detail the right way to get things done. I have to tell you, even after 8 years of college and seminary, 11 years leading a congregation, hours of study, meetings, conferences, I have yet to find a single manual to tell me the right way to do things. The Bible's a big book, but in the midst of all of its salvation history, even with all the books and letters with careful instruction on doctrine in the Christian life, it isn't life's little instruction book. God's Word doesn't contain step-by-step instructions to make sure you are doing Christianity right. No situation is exactly the same as another. No life is the same. No gathering of people is the same. No community is the same. No challenge is the same. The resources we have are not the same as what others have. And the technology that now connects the whole world means that some of the challenges and some of the changes can come so suddenly that it is nearly impossible to be prepared in advance. And so, don't we sometimes have to wonder, are we doing things right? These questions only grow more intense when things around us scream, "You are doing everything wrong." When your friend tells you they aren't interested in that religion stuff, did I say something wrong? When people say God is love, and they use those words to rebuke you because you call a sin, am I wrong? Am I being too judgmental? When one church is growing, when one church isn't growing, but the one down the street is, and they have a band, their pastor is cool, his servants are relevant, they bring the Bible into pop culture, like all the hip kids are doing these days, are we doing it wrong? A sister congregation holds to the truth, but they don't use the hymnal, not even the new one. They don't worship in the Wells way. Are they doing it wrong? Or maybe we're the ones doing it wrong. In our own personal lives, is life just really hard right now? Is it something I did? Money is tight. Is God angry with me? A loved one is sick. Have I failed to pray hard enough? Or somehow failed to say just the right words? Our nation is going in the wrong direction, we feel. Do we need to fight back a little harder? Or maybe we're fighting back too hard in all the wrong directions. When we are in distress, when things are challenging, maybe even when things are going well, when we are different, we wonder, how can I be sure we're doing things right? Barnabas lived up to his name. God is the source of all encouragement. Jesus is the Lord of grace. In the past, Barnabas had shown himself to be a true son of God, that is, a son of encouragement. Now, he showed it again. When he arrived and saw God's grace, he was glad and encouraged them all to remain true to the Lord. This is who Barnabas was, thoroughly equipped for the task that God had given him. He was a good man who was full of the Holy Spirit and faith, and a large number of people were added to the Lord. I don't know what to do. I don't know what I can do. I don't know if I'm doing things right. These thoughts will paralyze us into doing nothing. Too often we let the opportunity slip by us because we were afraid to do things wrong. But the early church learned God provides opportunities for his people in unexpected ways. Therefore, we trust God's Spirit will send the assistance we need, the encouragement we need to hear. Living the Christian life isn't about pulling out the manual and following the proper procedures and torquing all those nuts and bolts just right. You do not belong to God because you are going to always do things right. You belong to God because Jesus died for your sins. You have new life because his grace rests on you. You can live in freedom because his love covers over a multitude of sins. We have tremendous freedom to live, to work, to serve, and to love. You aren't commanded to follow these step-by-step instructions, but encouraged to remain devoted to the Lord, the infinite and wise God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. He provides the opportunity. He is the one who will be with you. He provides the encouragement. He equips his people. His Spirit fills you. His grace covers your failings. His power accomplishes his will. And therefore his Spirit still sends that encouragement. Do not be paralyzed by fear or uncertainty, but be devoted to the Lord in the joy of his grace. The Spirit was so active in Antioch that Barnabas saw an opportunity to bring in a little bit more help. You see, a few years earlier, probably 5 or 6 years earlier, a miracle happened. Saul of Tarsus, who was the one who held Stephen's clothes while those stones flew, Saul began to proclaim the gospel of Jesus. In fact, Saul preached so boldly that he had to be smuggled out of Damascus. But still the people in Jerusalem weren't so sure. How could they possibly trust a man who just a few years before had been breathing out murderous threats? Barnabas took the risk. Barnabas sought Saul. He saw God's love in him. He brought him to the other believers. Saul's former allies had turned against him until it wasn't safe for him in Jerusalem, and so the believers whisked him away to Tarsus. God called Saul my chosen instrument to carry my name before the Gentiles and kings and the people of Israel, adding, I will show him how much he must suffer for my name. But Saul had been waiting in Tarsus for 5 years, waiting for God to send him. Waiting until Barnabas came and knocked on his door. Even if a task can be done alone, we are able to do way more than twice as much when 2 people get to work. Together, Saul and Barnabas vigorously taught the church in Antioch, so much so that the church developed a reputation. The people there started calling them Christians. When the Lord warned through the prophets that a famine approached, Barnabas and Saul knew just what to do. They gathered an offering from the wealthy in Antioch to help support the impoverished in Judea. And when the time was right, the Lord sent them together to spread the gospel. They spoke boldly in Cyprus. They endured persecution throughout Turkey. They established congregations. When Paul thought John Mark was unfit for the work of a missionary, Barnabas continued to encourage the young man. Barnabas and Paul parted ways, but both continued to preach the gospel in boldness and joy. Church tradition holds that Barnabas continued to preach and to teach on Cyprus until a violent mob attacked him and killed him. He went on to glory, but through the power of the Holy Spirit, his work lived on, and many lived and believed the gospel. The U.S. Surgeon General has declared that loneliness is now a public health crisis. Even before social distancing, more than 50% of adults report feeling measurable amounts of loneliness. The announcement put into words what many already suspected. People feel separated from one another. When we are alone, almost anything can feel overwhelming. And the stress is bad for our health. The stress increases the risk of heart disease, stroke, dementia, and even premature death. We know loneliness is a problem, but few know what to do about it. You see, in times of distress, we are often tempted to retreat. When we are under pressure, we get protective of what we have. When enemies seem to abound, we either put up walls to defend ourselves or form factions to fight back. Just when we need others and all their different skills and viewpoints, we are tempted to pull away. We are not made to go through this life alone. We need others beside us to continue to live and to work, especially in difficult times. And my friends, that is why the Spirit places you in a congregation, in a gathering of believers, people who aren't exactly like you, who might not think like you do, who don't do what you do, who don't share the same interests or have the same needs. When there was much work to do, Barnabas went to find Saul. When the well-off in Antioch, both Jew and Greek, heard about the famine, the first thing they thought to do was help those in Jerusalem. When the church in Antioch had experienced so much blessing, the first thing they thought to do was commission Paul and Barnabas to go preach the word on their behalf. This is the wonderful work of God in all times. In the worst times, in every challenge, the Spirit gives you to each other. He unites God's people to do God's work. What can I do? When we study the history of the saints, we learn from their faithful examples. Barnabas faced times of distress, but he didn't ask, well, what can I do? He jumped in asking, what can I do? The Spirit sent him where he was needed to be, and the church was built up through him. At times, maybe you need a Barnabas, someone who will encourage you and build you up and help you in your times of greatest needs. At other times, maybe the Spirit is sending you to be a Barnabas, to encourage others, and he will use you to help in ways that you never imagined. When we see a need, when we are overwhelmed, when we wonder what to do, pray to the Spirit, for the Spirit will always send the assistance that we need. Pray to the Spirit that the right people will be in place to get God's work done. Pray to the Spirit that he would use you, your words, your heart, your gifts, your life to the encouragement of others. You are the family of God. You are redeemed. You are forgiven. You have been chosen, called, confirmed in the Lord. You are never alone. God's Spirit unites you. Therefore, you can never be overwhelmed because God's Spirit dwells among you. When everything seems out of control, God is in control, and you always have something to do. Amen. Please rise. And now the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus our Lord. Amen. Let us join in confessing our common faith with the words of the Nicene